It's a good thing I have notes, folks. Notes are important. Recording has started. We will be recording this and we'll be making it available before the end of business today. It will be at the United Way YouTube channel, and we will share that link with everyone who registered for this webinar. All right, again, we are in webinar mode, which means chats are disabled. We'll be doing all Q&A through the Q&A function in your control bar. Please submit your questions there. We will let our presenters speak, and then I will field through the Q&A to write, if we've got time at the end, to surface questions to share with our presenters from Connecticut Department of Social Services. Also a reminder that this webinar is for providers, whether they're community-based providers, whether you're a municipality, whether you're a legislator or a legislative aide, to help you understand the policy changes so you can better serve your constituents. We will not be addressing individual cases or individual questions about anyone's SNAP case or scenario. We will only be talking about policy changes. If you've got individual questions about your case, please contact DSS through your typical channels. If you've got questions about benefits or eligibility, please call 211 or go to 211ct.org for further information. We will only be speaking high level today about policy changes, again, not be answering questions to anyone's particular case. We do hope we've got times for questions at the end, if we have time permitting. And again, I will field those from the Q&A chat. I am finally done with housekeeping. It's my pleasure to introduce Eric Harrison, Chief Executive Officer of United Way of Central and Northeastern Connecticut.
Thanks so much, Amy. Good morning. Pleasure to have you all here on the call. It's amazing the turnout that we have this morning for this important topic. I proudly serve as the chair of the Chief Professionals Council across Connecticut United Ways, alongside Shawanda Swain, who's the president and CEO of Middlesex United Way. And I want to shout out to Isabel Almeida, who's the president and CEO of United Way of Coastal and Western Connecticut, who played a significant role in mobilizing today's webinar across the Connecticut United Ways network. So thank you, Shawanda and Isabel. And I want to extend a special thanks to the Connecticut's Department of Social Services for partnering with Connecticut United Ways on today's informational webinar, specifically Andrea Barton-Reeves, Commissioner, Peter Hadler, Deputy Commissioner, and Dan Giacomi, Staff Director, who you'll be hearing from in just a moment. Our United Ways operate on the foundation that no one person or no organization can affect change alone. And that is why we're so grateful that nearly 2,000 people have registered for this webinar this morning. So thank you for coming together so we can best serve our communities and to help educate providers on the upcoming changes to SNAP and how to help people navigate these changes. It is my pleasure to turn it over to Connecticut Staff Director, Dan Giacomi. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Eric, thank you, United Way, for having us here as well. Before I get started, because I know she is short on time, I did want to offer my Commissioner, Andrea Barton-Reeves, the opportunity to say hello to you all this morning. So I will let her take it away.
Thank you, Dan, and thank you to United Way for hosting us this morning. We're delighted to come and speak to you to provide the details around what is happening at the federal level with SNAP, not only with work requirements, but we imagine you'll have a lot of questions about what's occurring during the shutdown as well. I can let you know that at the Department of Social Services, we have been following the path of H.R.1 since its inception. We have been modeling particular scenarios and outcomes, and we've been working, we think, exceptionally hard under really difficult circumstances to try to keep track of all of this for the benefit of our stakeholders, and you're an extremely important part of our stakeholder community, and for those that we all serve mutually. It's a very difficult time for a lot of people with an enormous amount of uncertainty. We feel it every day with all of the offices that we have around the state, people who are calling and coming in, really wondering what their future looks like. And what is it that we are doing as public servants and in the not-for-profit community to help them remain secure in the places and with the services that are most important to them, which obviously include access to food. So as we know, and I'm sure that Deputy Commissioner Hadler and Staff Director Dan Giacomi, but let me just be really clear, Dan is our acting Staff Director. He has been promoted and he's now working in 2 positions while we search for his replacement, but he is still a nationally recognized expert in SNAP, and we're just so glad that he decided to promote within DSS and not leave us for other places far and wide that recruit him regularly. So we're really happy that he's still in Connecticut. But with that aside, let me just let you know that everyone has been working tirelessly to try to come up with the best solutions to make sure that people have what they need, that the fewest number of people are impacted by the changes to work requirements in SNAP, and that we try to provide some sort of sense of security for people who will be truly adversely impacted by the shutdown. So we thank you for the chance to talk with you today about this. I can only stay on for a few more minutes and then I will have to go, but you are in great hands with Deputy Commissioner Hadler and with Dan Giacomi. And so I will turn it back over to Dan and to United Way. And thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, Commissioner. And as the Commissioner noted, we, when scheduling this with the United Way, had intended to provide an update solely on HR1, also known as the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, today to you all. But obviously, with the changing federal landscape, we realize that there are a lot of individuals, both on the call today and throughout the state, and those that we share through our partnership here as clients, that are concerned about the national federal government shutdown that is currently occurring. So we did intend today, and we will be providing an update on that. And for that, I will turn to one of our three deputy commissioners, Deputy Commissioner Peter Hadler, and I will bring up the slide so he can walk us through an update on the federal government shutdown.
Thank you, Dan, and thank you all for having us here. Very happy to be able to share information in this time when there's a lot of things changing in the SNAP program and other programs here in Connecticut. So I'm going to briefly talk about some of the most latest updates around the federal shutdown and the impact on the SNAP program before turning it back over to Dan to walk through some of the changes that are being made here in the state due to HR1, as you can see, or the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, as it has been called by Congress. So we are going to quickly go through a couple of slides here to give you a timeline of how things have been changing during this month of the federal shutdown and what the latest information is regarding the SNAP program. So we wanted to highlight the timeline because it's been a bit of a challenging situation for both us as an agency administering SNAP, as well as all of our partners and clients who are so involved in the SNAP program or dependent on the benefits that it offers. Starting right at October, when the federal government shut down, FNS, which is our federal partners, the Food and Nutrition Service, as part of the United States Department of Agriculture, told states that the October SNAP benefits would be secure and paid, and this has borne out over the course of this month. We have continued to process applications and renewals for SNAP benefits and issued benefits all during this October month. On October 10th, FNS advised us that there would be insufficient funds to pay all of the November SNAP benefits, and they suggested that prior issued benefits might not be available after October. We were working with this information to start alerting our partners and clients around the state, all of you on this call, or many of you who fall in the categories around our community partners, our municipal social service agencies, and many other folks who are so critical to the proper administration of the SNAP program. We've been sharing information based on that original piece of information that FNS advised us of on October 10th, because we had not received anything at all up until Friday. So on Friday, FNS did contact us and sent out 2 memos to all the states in the country at 8 p.m. on Friday, letting us know 2 things. One, that there would be no funds at all for November SNAP issuances, but they did also note that any prior issued benefits could still be used after October 30th. So I just really want to quickly recap exactly where we are so that everyone has the latest information. All of the SNAP benefits that are issued on a card before October 31st are going to be available to be used in November. The EBT cards will work at SNAP retailers going forward per the latest information from FNS. However, according to the federal government, they do not have any funds available, and we will not be permitted to issue SNAP benefits for any households nationwide in the month of November. This is something that could theoretically change, but again, this is the best information that we have at this time. And because the federal government is solely responsible for the issuance of the benefit portion of SNAP, this is something that is primarily in their discretion to determine. Again, The state helps to administer SNAP. So here in Connecticut, you may interact with DSS, of course, as the sort of face of the program here, but the federal government is actually providing all of the benefits. So there's nothing that we can do directly to impact the federal decision to say there will be no SNAP benefits issued in November at this time. We do want to highlight, however, that this is confined to SNAP. Many folks who have EBT cards also receive other forms of assistance through those cards, including cash assistance. Cash benefits are not interrupted. So if you're receiving TFA, SAGA, state supplement, or refugee cash assistance, those funds will continue to be available and accessible on EBT cards, regardless of whether they're issued before or after October 31st. So this is the latest information we have. We understand that this is very challenging and concerning for many people around the state. We are also deeply concerned about the impact on our clients. There will be additional information coming out later today as the governor will be providing some more information on the response to this federal announcement that just came out on Friday, and how Connecticut as a state will be helping to respond to the situation. With that said, because this is basically the situation that we have for the shutdown, I'm going to pass it back over to Dan, who's going to walk through some of the other changes that are coming through H.R.1. These are changes that are impacting the SNAP program for the there's a number of different impacts that are coming, and Dan can help us walk through each of them so that everyone can understand what will be happening for the various populations impacted by these changes. Dan, I'm passing it back to you.
Thank you again, DC Hadler, for that information. As DC Hadler stated, this is a very fluid situation, and this is the best available information that we have at this time for the shutdown itself. As more information does become available, we will be sending out emails to our community partners and our legislators. We will be posting on our DSS website as well as on our social media pages, facebook.com/CTDSS, as well as X, formerly Twitter, again, CTDSS. So if you are looking for the most up-to-date information, I would suggest that you check our DSS website or the social media pages, as that will be the quickest way for us to get the information out to the largest number of individuals. Also on our DSS website, we do have an FAQ page, frequently asked questions, that does answer a lot of the information that individuals have been asking recently, and is updated as new information does become available. With all that said, we are going to transition a bit to, as DC Hadler mentioned, and I started with the federal H.R.1, known as the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, that was signed on July 4th, 2025 by President Trump, and that will impact thousands of Connecticut residents who receive SNAP benefits. It will also have impact on those residents that receive, or some residents that receive, Medicaid benefits, what we call Husky here in Connecticut. However, today's presentation will focus solely on the SNAP benefits. And the reason for that is that when the bill was signed, as you may see in future slides, there was no future dated start date for these changes, which means, practically speaking, that the changes will occur or should occur immediately. It means that we have to start implementing them as soon as feasibly possible. The three changes that we're going to focus on this morning are, first, what's called heat and eat restrictions. The second, eligibility changes for non-citizens. And the third, and perhaps largest change, is the work requirement changes. So we'll start off first with, as I said, the effective dates. As you see with the three topics that we spoke of, which are the heat and eat changes, the eligibility changes for non-citizens, and the work requirements, they did not, as I noted, have an effective date. So that meant they were become effective upon passage, which was July 4th, 2025. However, we do anticipate implementing them starting in November 2025. Similarly, we had something that we'll speak to in a little bit called a work requirement exemption or waiver. Each year, the state of Connecticut would put forward a waiver to the federal government to say we have areas in the state that lack sufficient jobs. So because of that, individuals that want to work have a harder time being able to find work. And we don't think that they should be penalized for not being able to find a job because they live in these areas. and it would allow us to exempt those towns or cities from the work requirements. We have since been noted that we are no longer able to implement that waiver in the way that we previously did, and we have to end our current waiver effective November 2nd, 2025, which means that the impacted households will start to see those changes beginning December 2025. But as I said, we will get into that in a little bit. Regarding the heat and eat changes, what this is also known as, for those that have been around the SNAP program for some time, was originally called the SUA dollar, or Standard Utility Allowance dollar, or SUA $20 and a penny. In the SNAP program itself, when we look at an individual's eligibility, the first thing that our eligibility workers look at are their income. Or is their income, I should say. They look at the amount of funds that the household has each month prior to any taxes or deductions being taken out of their check, as well as any expenses that the household incurs. Once they look at the gross income, they then compare the gross income to available expenses or deductions. One of those deductions is the household's shelter expense and utility expenses, understanding that especially in the Northeast, but perhaps in other parts of the country, the Midwest or the extreme North in Montana and the Dakotas, during the winter months, we pay a higher than average amount of expenses for heating. And perhaps in the southern parts of the country, they pay a higher than average amount of expense for cooling. So what they did is they put a specific deduction for the amount that households are able to claim towards their eligibility in heating and cooling costs. One of the ways that they said that households can have this heating or cooling deduction available to them is if they received a direct cash benefit for the cost of heating and cooling. They noted that that direct cash benefit had to be at least $20, or more than, I should say, not at least, but more than $20 per year that they received. So many states, including Connecticut, provide once a year to households a benefit of $20 and 1 penny, because obviously that is more than the $20. That allows us to unlock this shelter expense for our households, which then allows them to receive a higher benefit amount in SNAP benefits. As a result of H.R.1, Congress has changed the requirement to only those households that contain what they consider to be an elderly member, which is someone that is age 60 or older, or a member with a qualifying disability, meaning they have SSI or some other factor. They have been determined to be disabled by a qualified medical provider. So what you'll see there is, because of that, what we do expect is that approximately 50,000 households in the state will no longer be eligible for that heat and eat credit, which means they will no longer be eligible for that higher shelter deduction, and they will see a loss in SNAP benefits. Through our work since July in trying to identify and quantify the amount of loss people may experience as a result of this change, we do expect that those 50,000 households would see a reduction in benefits by approximately $100 per month, which, if you multiply that out over 12 months, is an estimated loss of approximately $62.5 million annually in SNAP funds. That does not mean that all 50,000 households are going to lose the benefits. It means now that they are going to provide to us that they do incur or expected to incur a heating or cooling cost during the year in order for them to qualify for that benefit. What a heating or cooling cost doesn't necessarily mean that they're paying a utility company directly for the cost of heating their home or cooling their home. It could also mean that their landlord or whoever they're living with charges them more during the winter months for heat, or more during the summer months for cooling. But it does mean that they do have to incur a direct expense for the heating and cooling of the home that they're residing in order for them to maintain that level of benefits. On the DSS side, it does also mean that we will see a higher administrative burden, because now our staff members are going to have to receive and process those documents for the individuals, where previously we could see, or we would be the one, I should say, sending out the $20 and a penny. So our system would automatically calculate that the individual has a heating or cooling expense by the fact that they received those funds. We will now have to request verification of that information for households in order for us to provide that credit. The next slide being our changes to certain non-citizens. As you'll see on the left side of the screen, the current state is that there are many classifications of non-citizens that can qualify for SNAP, including lawful permanent residents, Cuban Haitian entrants, COFA citizens, which are those that are in the Pacific, Republic of Marshall, Republic of Palau, and the Federated States of Micronesia. But there are other categories as well that currently qualify for SNAP benefits, which are refugees, asylees, and parolees, victims of trafficking, victims of domestic violence, and Afghan or Iraqi special immigrants, who are, generally speaking, those individuals that worked with the federal government, specifically the US military, during the Iraq or Afghanistan occupations or wars there. Effective July 4th and expected to be implemented in November, those categories that you see highlighted in orange on this screen will no longer qualify for SNAP benefits. It will solely be lawful permanent residents, Cuban Haitian entrants, and COFA citizens that will now qualify. So what we are expecting for this category here is that there are currently approximately 3,000 individuals in the state that are identified in our eligibility system as fitting into one of these categories. Similar to our prior planning for the last screen, what DSS is doing now is we are reviewing the citizenship status of all of the individuals in our eligibility system to identify if those individuals have had a change in status. For example, refugees and asylees, after 1 year of being in the United States, can petition to become a lawful permanent resident, which would then change their eligibility status. So we want to ensure that when we make the changes to our eligibility system, that only those individuals that are currently identified with the federal government as being ineligible for SNAP benefits are the ones that perhaps lose assistance, and that there aren't individuals that have had a change of status that are no longer ineligible that are accidentally deemed so. Finally, speaking on the SNAP ABOD work requirements, again, you see our current state and our future state. Current state being adults age 19 through 54 must prove that they are engaged in at least 80 hours per month of work or community engagement. It also exempts those households with children under the age of 18 from needing to meet those work requirements, and currently exempts a few different categories. The waivers we talked about a little bit earlier in the presentation, but also veterans, those experiencing homelessness, and those under age 24 who were in foster care at age 18 that are perhaps aging out. When the changes are made in November, what you will note is that the upper bound age limit is increasing by 10 years. So it'll now be adults aged 19 through age 64. It also reduces the age of the child that is considered to be a dependent, and that would exempt them from the work requirements from under age 18 to under age 14. It removes the exemptions for those that are identified as veterans, those experiencing homelessness, and those in foster care. And it limits the geographic waiver, as I spoke of earlier, to towns and areas that have an unemployment rate greater than 10%. Unfortunately, at this time, there are no towns, counties, cities, or otherwise in Connecticut that have an unemployment rate of greater than 10%. In fact, there's only a handful of towns or cities nationwide that have an unemployment rate of greater than 10%, which means that currently in Connecticut, there will be no towns or cities that will be able to be exempt from the work requirements. Let's get into that a little bit on the next slide. As I noted, DSS operated under the administrative waiver. that an area lacks sufficient jobs, we are no longer able to do that. As of November 2nd, as I mentioned earlier, is when that waiver will expire and when we will be required to update our eligibility system to remove the exemption from the 68 towns that currently have a time limit waiver in calendar year 2025. You can see on the screen here the map of Connecticut. Those highlighted towns that you see in either the light blue or the dark blue are the towns that currently have the time limit waiver, and that will be losing it effective November 2nd. Because it is not a full month that we are removing this waiver, we are allowed to continue the waiver itself through the end of November, which means that the new rules will effectively take place December 1st, 2025. That is when individuals that are subject to the work requirements will either see that their benefits have ended because they had already previously received their eligible period of months for SNAP, which is 3 months in a 36-month period, or they will see their months starting to be counted, which means they will only have up to 3 months beginning December 1st in which they will be able to receive SNAP benefits unless they're meeting the work requirements or provide to DSS that they have a different exemption. We do expect that approximately 20,000 individuals throughout the state with town exemptions will now be subject to the ABOD work requirements, and that approximately 1,500 out of those 20,000 have already received their 3 months of eligibility and will see their benefits close November 30th unless they provide to DSS that they have another exemption. We do also want to clarify that if an ABOD or an able-bodied adult without dependents, who are what these work rules are tailored towards, are no longer eligible to receive SNAP benefits, only the ABOD individual themselves loses eligibility. The remaining household members, including any children in the household, may still qualify, though they will see their household size reduced, and as a result, their benefit amount reduced by the number of ABODs impacted in their household. I believe this is the last slide that we have here, and this is a kind of an overview. As we said, there are other exemptions that individuals are being removed from. We noted the veterans exemption, the homelessness exemption, et cetera. When you total that number up with the 20,000 that are losing their town exemption, we do expect that there are 36,000 current SNAP recipients at risk of losing SNAP benefits because of the new work requirements. We also wanted to provide this overlay of the state again that show not only when you include those other exemptions with the town exemptions, as we note that we do serve individuals in every town in the state of Connecticut, you'll see that by and large, these changes are going to affect individuals in every town in the state of Connecticut. You do see that some of the more harmful effects are occurring throughout the middle of the state, which is centralized to where our largest cities are. But you do see larger than average changes both in the southwest and southeastern corners, as well as when you get up into the northeast corner as well in the Torrington area there. As I also noted, there are other exemptions individuals can qualify for, such as receiving unemployment benefits, being pregnant, receiving Social Security disability or VA disability benefits. And we will take every attempt to ensure that an individual that has a qualifying benefit that DSS can identify is identified as having an exemption to the work requirements, but there may be instances where individuals do need to provide documentation to DSS to show that they are meeting an exemption. We have stood up a pre-screener for individuals to be able to go to see if they are exempt or potentially exempt from the work requirements, or if they're meeting the work requirements. We would encourage individuals to utilize it. It can be found at www.ct.gov/snap/ABOD, ABAWD. So if folks do want to go there and identify or to see if they're potentially affected based on their current situation, they can do so. And it does also provide some next steps for individuals to identify and present information to DSS to show that they are potentially exempt from the work requirements. It also provides some resources for individuals that are not exempt to be able to go to, such as their local community action agency or 211, to find additional resources that may be able to help them. That is the last slide that we have here. We'd be happy to answer any questions that Amy is able to provide to us and that we have some information on for you all today. So I will stop sharing my screen and turn it over to Amy if she has anything to provide to us.
Thank you so much. That was a lot of information, but very clearly presented and greatly appreciated. No surprise, we have lots of questions. So Dan and Peter, my question to you is, I'm trying to bucket the questions. Would it be helpful to talk about federal shutdown related questions first?
Yes, I think so.
All right. So Peter, I'm bringing you up on Spotlight also, and looking at my question list, which there are many. I tried to bracket questions together. I will say lots of questions. We will be sharing the recording of this webinar by the end of the day today via email to everyone who registered. Please look for an email from @ConnecticutUnitedWay.org, which will bring you to the YouTube. Will we also be able to share the PowerPoint slides from today's presentation?
Yes.
Great, that will also be shared. All right, questions related to the shutdown. Just to summarize what I thought I heard, Peter, I'm going to say it out loud. This is your great chance to correct me. Is late breaking news is that benefits up through SNAP benefits that people have on their cards through October 31st can be used and can be carried over and used starting in November, but there will be no new SNAP benefits as of November 1. Did I get that correct?
You got that right.
All right. I hope that was clear and helpful to everyone. Great. Well, are SNAP applications still being accepted?
Yes, they are. And we are at this point planning to stay open and processing applications. Right? We don't know exactly when the federal government might end. And we do want to be prepared and able to provide benefits to anyone who is eligible as soon as that moment occurs. So we are going to continue to process applications and renewals. For folks who have ongoing benefits, they should continue to report changes in circumstances. And we will be doing our best, of course, pending federal funding and guidance to issue benefits as promptly as we are able to do so.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. So
if I may add to that,
please.
individuals, if we do process an application, we may also have to notify those individuals that although they have been approved because there are no benefits going out beginning in November, that they will not receive the benefits until the government shutdown ends. So we will still accept them, we will still process them. However, similar to the ongoing benefit amounts that are not going out in November, we're not able to send out any new benefits beginning in November either.
Great. What I hear from that is this is, despite all these challenges, still one of the largest investments in keeping people healthy and fighting hunger that we have. And if you have someone you think is eligible, apply.
I agree. Yes. And just to remind everyone of the scale, it's a little over $70 million a month that we are normally able to distribute in SNAP benefits. So it's a very significant amount of funding that helps support approximately 360,000 individuals around the state each month. And that funding is not going to be available as a new issuance for November based on the latest information from the federal government.
And what happens if the federal government reopens before November or once it reopens, let's assume in November?
So what will happen in that scenario is the federal government will notify DSS that it has reopened and provide procedures as to how we should effectuate the sending out of benefits, which would include information on whether or not individuals are eligible to receive back pay or back benefits. We would then work immediately with our EBT vendor to send the files that we had been holding from sending to them, so that they can start to issue the benefits as quickly as possible. Understanding that there are only 2 EBT vendors that operate throughout the country, which means there are roughly 25 and 25 states that are sending to the same vendor. So it may not be instantaneous. It may take a few hours or a day or two to implement and process all of those files, but that as soon as the information is received, we will immediately start our process with sending the files over to them so that benefits can get onto individuals' EBT cards.
So Danielle, what I hear you saying clearly is you're ready to act as soon as you get any notification from the federal government, and you will move into gear, but you do not know the answer to some questions, such as what that would mean for processing time. And also a big popular question, as you can imagine, will there be back pay for benefits missed? I heard you say you do not know the answer to that yet.
We don't. We would expect that there would be, but as DC Hadler mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, ultimately the federal government is the purse holder, if you will, or the bank that issues the benefits. So they will tell DSS whether or not we are able to send out back benefits to individuals.
Thank you very much. I also heard you share two things that I think are in high demand, if you could repeat. One of which is, I believe you said track changes on what's happening on the DSS, Connecticut Department of Social Services. Socials is the best way to stay up to date. That's correct. And you're on
correct.
Facebook.
Yep,
Instagram.
we are on Facebook. You can look up, it's www.facebook.com/CTDSS. And similarly on X or Twitter, it is the CTDSS is our handle there as well. And as information comes out, that is the most immediate place that we can provide the information up, as is our DSS website, excuse me, www.ct.gov/DSS.
Thank you so much. And was that also the same address for the screening for eligibility, which was also something people wanted to hear again?
www.ct.gov/snap/ABAWD, ABOD, and that will take you directly to the screener. And I can also put the email addresses into the chat for everyone.
That would be great. Or yes, if you can chat those to me, I think you can chat those to me. If you can't chat them to everyone, I should know the answer to that, and I will make sure they get pushed out to everyone. Thank you so much for that.
I've included a couple of answers in the Q&A if anyone's able to see those.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. And you might have answered this. Oh, great. Thank you that you can post that. Are people on SSI or FEMLA also affected?
So those, if we're speaking to the HR1 changes specifically, if we're speaking to the shutdown, all SNAP recipients are affected. It does not differentiate in household size or demographic information or anything like that. Speaking to HR1, when we look at the heat and eat changes, which was the utility changes, someone receiving SSI would be considered disabled, so they would still qualify. For the work requirement changes, those individuals would be exempt because they do have a defined disability by virtue of them receiving SSI, SSDI, or VA disability as well, regardless of the percent disabled that VA has identified the individual. They could be 10% disabled or 100% disabled. As long as they receive VA disability benefits, they would be exempt from the work requirements.
Thank you. Super helpful. And I also just want to reiterate one more thing you said, and again, correct me if I got this wrong, but that related to the shutdown, that cash assistance such as TFA or Transitional Assistance for Families and SAGA are not affected by the shutdown. Those benefits will still be available on people's cards.
That's correct. And it's Temporary Family Assistance. It's the TFA acronym.
I was messing things up, wasn't I?
That's all right.
Merging
a lot of
names
acronyms.
together.
It's good to spell them out.
Well, speaking of, I'm going to switch over. I think those were many of the primary questions related to the shutdown. I will keep combing for those, but flipping over to the changes related to HR1, or also known as OBA, lots of names for the bill, the federal legislation. Let's just start with something. Could you provide a definition of ABAWD, ABOD? Just dive into that a little bit for folks.
Sure. It's actually currently now considered a misnomer, I would say. So the definition of the acronym itself is able-bodied adults without dependents. So they define able-bodied adults, or previously defined able-bodied adults, as those individuals able to work between the ages of 19 through age 54, so until the individual turns 55, who do not have a child in the home under the age of 18. So that was the traditional definition. The reason I say it is a misnomer is because, as I noted earlier, they have reduced the age to, you do not have a child in the home under age 14, so 13 or younger. It's a misnomer, obviously, because those of us that have children know that children aged 14 through even greater than 18 at this point are still very much dependent upon their parents for at least some help or support every day. But it is, as I said, individuals that are able to work so that they're not disabled or do not have another qualifying exemption, age 19 through age 64, so until the time in which they turn 65, that do not have a child in the home under the age of 14.
Thank you very much. That was not simple, so I appreciate you reviewing that again. Some questions, and Peter, I see you answering questions in the Q&A. Thank you so much, folks. We have a lot of questions in there, doing our best, but please note that Peter is also answering questions in there. New applications for SNAP. Will the same kind of workflows and timeline, such as the interview, is that what people should anticipate, or do you expect changes regarding the workflow or timeline?
We would not expect changes. There is no changes in HR1 or otherwise that would change the workflow or timeline as to how we process SNAP applications. We would note that because of these changes, there are going to be more documentation and verifications requested and needing to be provided, which does at times take more time for individuals to be able to process those applications. They have to request the information, it has to be provided back to them, they have to review it and make a determination. So there may be a little bit longer time to process the applications, but it's one of the reasons that we're having webinars such as this, so that we can ask our community partners to become familiarized with the changes and the necessary documents, so that they could help our shared clientele provide the information up front. Because the more information that we have up front, the less back and forth that's needed with the eligibility worker, the shorter the time frame it takes to process an application.
All right, so that was some of the questions that came in. If people know they're going to be affected and they have updated information, don't delay. Reach out to DSS through your existing protocols to get information into the system and to be working with your team as soon as possible.
Absolutely.
Great. We got a lot of questions across a lot of areas. I know you're seeing them too, so if there's specific things you want to answer, otherwise I'm going to kind of keep going through my list. A question that has come up here, but also outside, will any of this information that's being collected be shared with ICE? That's a question people have.
What's the question again, Amy? As far as how
the information shared through the SNAP app. I think the question was regarding, like, if I input information in my SNAP application, will that be shared with ICE? And does that put me or my family or the person I'm working with at risk in any way of ICE action?
Sure.
Good and very challenging question. Under our historical understanding of the way that information should be used in the SNAP program, it should not be shared with ICE. However, there is currently a disagreement with the federal government about what data should be shared and who it should be shared with. Connecticut is participating in litigation to have the legal interpretation that we understand that should apply be the rule, and that would result in that information not being shared. But if the courts do not ultimately agree with our interpretation, it is possible for information on a SNAP application to be shared with other agencies in the federal government, including potentially Homeland Security and us.
That was a hard answer to hear, Peter.
Yeah.
But thank you for delivering it and delivering it clearly. And thank you for all the efforts of DSS and our state on advocating for our residents.
May I add a little bit of information there as well?
Please.
DSS does only check the information for those that are applying for the SNAP benefits. meaning if you're included in a household, but you perhaps know that you are not eligible by virtue of your non-citizenship status, you can report to DSS that you do not wish to apply for the benefits themselves, in which case we would not provide that information through our normal checks with our federal partners, and it would better protect the household from not having that information shared. Though, as DC Hadler noted, there are some disagreements in the information, but there are opportunities, as I noted, for households to say, I'm applying, but only for my kids. I know I would not qualify, so I don't want to share my information, in which case DSS would not push forward with that.
Thank you so much. That is important for people to understand and how they can control their information. I really appreciate that. Okay, let's talk about work requirements for a moment. You talked about work requirement exemption, any level of VA, disability. You talked about being on SSI. We've got a lot of questions about people who have diagnosis of disabilities, but perhaps aren't on SSI. Are they exempt from work requirements, or any other information you want to pass on work requirements?
Sure. We will say that for individuals that are applying for SSI or SSDI, as long as the application is still pending, that would qualify for them for an exemption. Though if they were denied disability, they would no longer qualify at the point from when the denial was obtained. We do also have a medical report form that we could provide to the household, that they could give to a medical provider to note that the individual is unable to work for 20 hours a week or 80 hours a month or more, or they can provide a letter from a certified medical provider that says that they're unable to work, and you know, based upon the information that the provider has, that we would be able to accept as well. So it does not necessarily have to be that you're disabled. There could be information. We have an exemption category that is actually physically or mentally unable to work, and in which case we would accept information from a provider.
That's fabulous. Thank you very much for saying that specifically. That is not just those things, that there are other options. Work requirements, 80 hours a month. What does volunteering mean? I know you do not have all the guidance perhaps you would like very clearly, but can you guys just dive into that a little bit more and give us your best sense of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Working means, you know, doing something in exchange for pay, right? So that's what work is. In Connecticut specifically, it is either 80 hours a month that you're working in job training or volunteering, or you're making at least $217.50 a week. So it could be either one that we would look at in order to say that you're meeting the work requirements themselves. For volunteering, what we would need, and again, volunteering means any, you know, structured organization or otherwise that notes that you're providing your time free of charge to them to help in something. But we would require that you provide a letter from the organization that you're volunteering with that notes the hours that you volunteer, the program that you're volunteering for, some of the work you're doing to volunteer. It's not necessarily going to be accepted a letter from a friend that says Mr. or Mrs. Smith volunteers at my house for 80 hours. It does need to be a little bit more structured perhaps than just that it is with an organization or company that you're volunteering with. But it is a combination of any of those three. It's a combination. You could be working 20 hours a week and volunteering, you know, 20 hours the next week. You could be doing the two of those and be in a job training program or educational program for a period of time as well. It's a combination of the three, have to total up to at least 80 hours a month.
And could you please repeat that income requirement again per week? That popped up a lot of questions.
$217.50.
Very
So it would be the federal minimum wage, which is currently $7.25, multiplied by 30.
Great.
And if I could just note,
yes,
if anyone
please.
wants to have all this information at their fingertips, it is up on our website. Again, where we directed folks to check out the pre-screener to see if people are potentially impacted by the work requirements. There are also detailed information about how one can comply and all of those definitions that might be relevant to someone trying to find an exemption or to see if they're currently in compliance with work requirements. And that is, again, at ct.gov/snap/ABAWD, ABAWD.
A word that I used to not use that much, which has now become part of my life. Can you confirm a few questions about this, that SIV holders are no longer eligible for SNAP?
Yes, that is correct. If this only visa type they have is a special immigrant visa, and I know that I've seen some there are some different situations for folks. I see some comments and questions where folks are distinguishing between people who may have acquired green cards and maybe legal permanent residents. This is so folks' immigration statuses can change. We are still waiting for some clarification from the federal government about what it means when you've got sort of a current immigration status and a prior one, and what that means for your SNAP benefits. So we will be providing additional information as we receive it from FNS about who will be impacted and when within this non-citizen groupings. It's very challenging, and I know that uncertainty is not what folks are desirous to hear, but that is where we are right now. And we will continue to provide information as those details become more clear about folks who have got potentially multiple immigration statuses and whether they'll fall on one side or another and being able to continue to qualify for SNAP and other programs.
Yeah, and thank you for acknowledging, right, that people's lives are fluid and many people are in process in many things. And does not sound like we have all the answers to those questions yet. And what I heard you say, Peter, also is, do we have a timeline for implementing the H.R.1 exclusion of refugees, asylees, and humanitarian paroles? It sounds, is that timeline firm, or is that one of the timelines in flux?
That's one of the ones that's a little bit in flux. Again, we have a lot of states are sort of waiting to see what the federal government will say, because they need to reconcile some prior existing rules that apply to the population versus and with the new changes in the federal law. This is usually sort of the guidance that we anticipate receiving from our federal partners, and that has not been forthcoming to date about this particular population. We have received some clarifications around town exemptions and waivers, for example, and that's why you're seeing some more concrete dates around when those are rolling out around the state. But we are still in a bit of a holding pattern with our federal partners, and of course with the shutdown, information is coming out even more slowly. So we will certainly update everyone as soon as we have detailed information about what documentation might be needed to confirm ongoing eligibility, and whether immigration statuses have changed, and how we can incorporate that data into our program and help support the population as best we're able to do.
Thank you. And we understand you do not have all the answers, but sharing very clearly what you do and what you're still waiting for guidance on. How about families that have kids in school, particularly college? I mean, noted, I think you talked about education, I think, being part of that mix of those 80 hours per month, but it'd be great if perhaps you could just clarify that. Oh, and you're on mute.
Sorry, I wanted to make sure I didn't speak over the deputy commissioner. Students in school have special requirements to receive SNAP benefits. So students in school already have to be enrolled. If they're enrolled at least half time, they have to be participating in work study or have other special requirements. However, if students do currently meet the SNAP eligibility requirements, that is not changing for them. There are no changes to the student eligibility pieces. And being a student that qualifies for SNAP by meeting the special student eligibility rules also exempts you from the work requirements.
Thank you very much for that.
There is a question, Amy, in the pre-screener regarding students that also has a link to the student eligibility requirements. So if folks go to the eligibility pre-screener and they were to say, yes, I am a student at least half time, it would provide them a direct link to our student eligibility rules as well.
Thank you so much for that. We have 4 minutes left. I want to share a couple things and then ask a couple more questions. All right. We will share out with everyone at the conclusion of this. Again, the link to the recording, a copy of the PowerPoint, many of the links referenced by our guests today. Thank you very much. So you have all that in one place. I want to also point out a link we will share is that IRIS, a New Haven-based organization, has SNAP resources translated into 5 languages and a Q&A format. We will send that link out also. That will be helpful for folks. And Iris has a question out to our participants today. What other languages would be helpful to have a Q&A related to this? So if you want to answer that question in the Q&A function, we will share that information with Iris and point people in that direction. And many thanks for that offer and for the ongoing support. All right. One final question. We have an amazing outpouring of kind of question and support. A lot of questions about, will the governor respond to these changes? What can we do? How do we support our local food pantries? How do we support people in this time? I certainly have lots of thoughts on these questions, but we're here to hear your thoughts on those questions. So please do share.
Yeah, thank you, Amy. It's a great question, right? We are carefully, obviously, watching this here at DSS and very concerned about what it means for households around the state. The governor, I believe, will be providing an update later this afternoon about some of the response the state is able to do. We certainly encourage anyone who has the means to be able to support or to donate their time or money to be able to support households who are going through this challenging time period. I believe that 211 has an excellent listing of places that people can go for food support, food banks and pantries that you could potentially contact to help support directly, or if you are looking for food that they will be able to provide. That is unfortunately, or for better or for worse, our first line of defense when we're unable to provide funding, is that those resources that historically and always are providing food to communities are the places that folks will be looking to for food, and where we hope to be able to provide some support to folks as well. So that is one avenue that we think is probably a good place to go for both clients and for people looking to provide assistance. And I think we'll hear some more information about the governor's planned response later today.
Great. So just on that note, with 1 minute to go, first I want to thank our amazing presenters today. It was delightful to have the commissioner on with us, and of course our 2 deputy commissioners. Thank you so much. So much information presented so clearly. We're all left with many questions, but that is not on your shoulders. We appreciate you bringing your expertise and your wide view and very narrow view of what this means for Connecticut residents and all of us who serve residents right now at this special moment. Deeply appreciated. Thank you for all the concern about how we help people on this call. I'm going to really encourage everyone, please, I think I feel safe speaking on behalf of all United Ways, connect with your local United Way, connect with people and organizations that are working together to support your neighbors, your friends, your family, and your network in your community to make it through this time and make sure people stay healthy and supported. Please go to 211ct.org to look for, clearly food assistance is the topic of the moment, but look for food assistance supports near you that you can access in your community. Use that resource, or of course, call 211 for more support. I want to thank everyone today for the caring for Connecticut residents and how we come together as a state during this time. It's pretty remarkable. I think we're pretty special. And I really thank our colleagues on this call for making this moment happen, and everyone who's so committed to serving all Connecticut residents. Thank you, everyone, and please look for these materials at an email from @ctunitedway.org later today. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.